Hilton excused for this evening, and 2, Dan Smith would like to participate remotely, and I believe we need to vote on that. To allow it. So
I move to allow Dan Smith to participate remotely.
Motion. We have a second by Lonnie.
For which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We actually did better than that with that when I remember that with the remote meeting for children.
Well, you didn't hear what we heard on your side.
All right. Open floor for public comment. Not seeing anyone at, 5:16. Not seeing anyone. We'll close it at 5:16. Everybody into board comments and committee updates. Anyone have any committee updates or comments?
We continue to work on the teacher growth and evaluation plan committee. Had a lot of good discussion and are continuing to move forward with focusing on a metric or tool that embodies all the core beliefs that we've agreed upon. So next meeting is July 23rd.
Wow, you're good. Anyone else? Policy?
We have policy on Monday.
All right, great. Everybody into the superintendent report?
Thank you. I guess I'd like to start by obviously school ended last week on Thursday the 13th, and if you saw the weather this week and the number of schools that were in session having to do early releases and or cancellations because of the extreme heat, I was thankful that we were able to wrap things up early enough so that we weren't confronting that. But yeah, it was a really good end to the school year. I do want to take a minute to congratulate all the different administrators and staff that put on some of the end of the year events. Clearly, graduation on June 7th is the kind of marquee event of the school system, and congratulations to Andy Corman and his staff and in the class of 24 for a great event, very student-centered graduation. You know, gives a great sense of pride to the community. Really enjoy seeing the number of community members who are not even connected to a current student who still come out and go to graduation. I think it speaks to the climate in Newmarket, so that's really exciting. Also wanted to just acknowledge the great work of our 8th grade staff. They did the 8th grade graduation last Wednesday night on the 12th. It was a wonderful event, recognizing the kids, and it was really nice to hear the teachers talk about some of the great attributes that their kids had at that. And then during the day on the 12th, we also had the 5th grade celebration, which was wonderful. I got to give a lot of credit to Sean Pine because they had intended to have a ceremony take place outdoors, and if you remember back to the 12th, it was a crazy weather day, and the weather changed dramatically, so they had to shift it on the fly, and they were able to pull off a really wonderful ceremony in the gym. But it was great. It was lovely to hear, from the teachers and from Sean just how wonderful the kids in the class, the 5th grade class are. So congratulations to all those kids as they graduates transitioning to life after Newmarket, but obviously the other kids just transitioning up to different levels of their education. So it's very exciting. I also wanted to acknowledge that, as I mentioned before, we ended school on the 13th, which was great. But the other piece, which was nice, was we also had a teacher professional day on the 14th. And it really did create a much more relaxed last couple of days of school. When you don't have a PD day after school gets out, there's a mad scramble. You dismiss school at noontime on the last day of school, and everybody has 3 hours to run around and get everything done that they need to before they leave. It really allowed us to follow through on some things. So there are a number of things we were able to do that in past years we were kind of just had to trust that people would take care of it. Janet and I did a presentation with the staff talking about the budget process, and as you can imagine, everybody was enthralled. As I said, jokingly told the staff, it's like, there's never a good time to talk about this, but I'm trying to front load us with information so that they can give us information so that our leadership can do budget development over the summer, so we don't have to hit them with it when they return in the fall. They appreciated that part of the message, not so much the budget presentation, but it was a good experience. We also spent some time reviewing the growth plans at each building. The junior senior high has developed a growth plan through the NEASC process. And by the way, on July 11th, we have scheduled to have both principals coming here to share their growth plans with you. So you can kind of see the work that is ongoing and is planned for the upcoming year. But the junior senior high has one developed through NEASC. And Sean Pine and the elementary school staff have really spent this year developing their growth plan. And so they're very much in sync. So that those growth plans are now in place. And Monday, this past Monday, we had the first of two leadership retreats. We bookend the summer, one at the beginning and one in August. The one that we did this past Monday was to talk about the work that we need to do over the summer and kind of give some focus to it. But we also spent some time crafting the district goals because we have two growth plans at each level, but like what are the overarching concepts that we're all guiding to? And I will share those with you on the 11th as well. But it was a very productive day, and I left feeling very good about that. One other thing I did want to mention, we did something new this year with staff. On the last day, we did what's called organizational health inventory, which is really I guess you'd call it a climate survey to give people an opportunity to give us some feedback on how they're feeling about the organization. So we've got some great data there. We will be reviewing that with building level administration, and I will share it with you as a board at some point, probably the next time we have a non-public to discuss the evaluation process of myself. I will share with you that information. We can certainly have some conversation about it. But it is really good information to get a feel for how people are feeling. One of the things in an organization, you often hear from the squeaky wheel, but you want to make sure you're getting everybody's perception. And what makes an organizational health inventory valuable is that everybody weighs in, and it gives you quantifiable numbers of, okay, how are people feeling? So anyway, I think it was a worthwhile thing to do. So anyway, that's a couple of things I wanted to share about the end of school. I think things went very well. I think we're entering summer. Very, very good. Patty's going to talk to you about some of the summer work that's going on this summer. So I think we're in a really good place there. Shifting focus from the last few days of school, I did want to just follow up. Probably 3 or 4 months ago, I think it was just before Lonnie came on board, I did a report on legislation that was pending in the legislature. And at the time, I believe there were 1,400 bills being considered, and about 140 of them were education related. As you can imagine, most of those bills fell by the wayside and died a slow death just because they were for a variety of reasons. But I did want to touch base with you about a couple of them that were things that's worth noting. One in particular, the bill that Representative Cahill has been promoting on the right to know law did get signed by the governor, or a version of it got signed by the governor.
Interesting.
Basically, and I'm still going to be waiting to hear from our council in terms of exactly what it's going to mean to us, but it does include a provision that allows for the recouping of costs associated with requests that are considered excessive, particularly focusing on electronic requests. So basically, they've defined requests that have 250 or more records as being significant and allowing for that. So I'll keep you posted. It probably will come up in policy at some point in terms of what do we need to do to change policy around how we manage that kind of stuff. But I think it speaks to the advocacy of Representative Cahill. I mean, I think he definitely did some great work there. So that did get passed. Another bill that passed that Olivia's not here, our new student school board rep, but they did pass a law that impacts student school board reps. Basically what they've done is they've made it possible for a student school board rep to miss a meeting. Not that we were holding people to such a rigid requirement, but apparently high school students serving on school boards have other things in their lives, and occasionally scheduling conflicts come up. The way the original law was written, it actually said you had to be at 100% of the meetings, and clearly there were an awful lot of student school board reps that were not able to fulfill that. So
Getting it done and conquered there, huh? Really?
so it's now okay for our student school board rep to occasionally miss a meeting. And then the other bill that was signed by the governor that I think is worth pointing out, there was some discussion of charter schools and their ability to access building aid. So that a law did pass that allows public charter schools to apply for building aid. Now, I'm looking at Jana because we both chuckle. It's like, what building aid? There really hasn't been building aid in a long time, but in the event that there is a building aid, public charter schools are now eligible to throw their hat in the ring and potentially access that money as well. Beyond that, most of the bills that I had told you guys about were ruled inexpedient to legislate. So, for example, there was a bill being discussed around social emotional learning and not allowing you to make reference to it in the school. That has, I would call, died a slow death, but it was basically ruled inexpedient to legislate because there was just no way to do it and enforce it. And there were one that failed, didn't make it out of the legislature, was to expand education freedom accounts from 300 people being eligible at 350% of the poverty level, raising it to 500%, which would have had a potential, was basically saying at 350%, a family can earn $105,000 and access an education freedom account. If they'd raised it to 500%, it would be like $155,000. So clearly it would have been a lot more people eligible. But that failed, so at least for now, it doesn't look like more resources are going to go to education freedom accounts. And then the last one I would mention, you probably have seen it in the news, a lot of talk about the bill that is trying to regulate sports, male and female. It's really targeting the transgender issue and trying to make it so that a biological male cannot participate in female sports. So it's basically defined. Male boys is one category, female girls is another category, and then co-ed is a third category. And basically what it's doing is it's putting the pressure on the NHIAA to not make rules that are permissive to allow students who are to play in different gendered sports. As of right now, it has passed both houses of the state legislature, and it's living somewhere waiting for it to get to the governor's desk for him to determine how he's going to act on it. I personally hope that he chooses not to sign it or vetoes it. But that's what's going on in the legislature. Happy to take any questions if people have any.
I did have one. On the org survey, based on the participation feedback, and I mean, not to paint you into a corner, but are you looking to have this kind of an annual thing or a kind of frequency you're thinking?
Well, I think, yes. My intention was what I told the staff on Friday when we did it. It was entirely anonymous, so it's not attached to anybody. But what I did tell them was the data would give us direction and that we might follow up with more precise questions for feedback. Mm-hmm. So my intention is to do it regularly as sort of a baseline of organizational health. And we talked about the leadership team. I think we all realize we need to start trying to gauge that. One of the things it's important to understand is that we are doing an awful lot of things that are changing practice and for the intention of improvement, but even good change causes stress and it causes anxiety. And I think I would be lying to you if I didn't say to you, I think there is angst in some elements of the. Hey Tim, Dan's
Getting ready
Trying to shut you down,
Getting ready to
Dan.
power himself off.
Do you need to look at my mouse?
Apparently.
stay awake, Dan. Stay awake.
Yep. Thank you, Lonnie.
But I think there is some angst there. So yeah. So as we move forward, we'll keep asking questions and trying to get people's feedback. I think in the end, we want a culture that people feel that they understand what their role is, they understand what the vision of our district is, they understand how they play a positive role in it, and they also feel good about their relationships between their colleagues and with their supervisors. Because in the end, that's how you're going to make the best progress. So yeah, so I would say we would absolutely be planning to do it at least annually, if not more often.
Did we build our own survey, or did we use an external one?
This was one that actually it's one that I had used before in Oyster River. I'd be happy to share it with you. I'm trying to remember the specific name of it.
But it's one that's like externally
Yes,
validated. It's not like
externally validated.
yeah.
Yeah, all the scores. Basically, yeah. So you can, depending on your score, you can compare. Are you average? Are you below average? So it gives you some guidance as to where should you invest your time.
Yeah. I'd like, in my day job, in my experience with that type of survey, doing it too frequently, or so frequently that there's not time to address the concerns that were issued in the last one, results in more frustration. Right. So like the ability to come back to the staff, like, hey, staff and faculty, and be like, here's what we've done based on your feedback. Like I think is.
Well, my intention is, number one, we're reviewing it as a leadership team over the next few weeks and trying to figure out, like, what is it telling us and what are some things we need to do. When we open school in the fall, I'd like to be very overt about it. Like, here's what you said, here's some things we've talked about, and here's where we're targeting some of these efforts. Yeah. And then more importantly is if we have been able to identify specific things that people have concerns, that we follow up with an opportunity for people to share their thoughts. Yeah. Because I think in the end, what we're trying to get to is a place where we are a collaborative work environment, where people are ready to do their best thinking and are not afraid to share their ideas when they have them, and they're not feeling like there's any repercussion for giving their best thinking on something. And I think sometimes that is easier to create than others, particularly when you have positional authority that people are in. And I can say a million times, yeah, tell me what you think. But are people really going to tell me what they think if I don't find a way to give them that opportunity? No.
Psychological safety.
Yeah, exactly.
Will the staff see all the collected data?
We're going to give them...
who maybe responded a certain way, or what percentage responded a certain way?
The data is broken out by schools. So we do have, like, the one thing, there was one that we did with the junior, senior high, and one that was done with the elementary school. We have to kind of go through it. I would hesitate to say we're going to share everything because I haven't even had a chance to go through it all. Certainly all the meaningful stuff. Basically, the indicators, it gives you a score in 4 different areas. And I'll just quickly, collegial leadership, in other words, what's the attitude that people have about their leadership? Professional teacher behavior, like what do you feel about your colleagues? Do you feel like they have your back? Do you feel like you're, in a collaborative environment? Achievement press, which basically is, do people feel like the community and the students are really promoting the best effort and results of our students? And then the last area is institutional vulnerability in terms of external pressures, and do they play a role, such as, like when I talked to them about the budget on Friday and just put it out there, state funding is doing this, I can't control for that. That's an external factor that can impact what we're able to do. But are there others? So anyway, so those are the areas you basically get scores on, and then we will talk about how we can get better.
I think sometimes just outliers aren't aware that they might be one of the few. And so sometimes you assume a lot of people feel the same way you do. And
Sure.
then if you're in a focus group when you have the data and you realize, oh, wait,
Yeah.
That is.
I'm one of these few and far betweens where I thought everybody kind of felt this way, whether it's
Right.
negative or positive,
Right.
felt this way. And so it kind of gives a little different perspective if other teachers
Right.
are the ones
Well,
with it versus
each-
administration where you're like, of course you feel that way because you're...
Right. Well, each domain has a score, and it's compared to an average. And so it's like, are you above average, below average, top 10%, whatever. You can take from that what you will.
But there's the truth sometimes hidden in the means, right? Like, so you get a mean, and if there's outliers that are like either impacting the mean or like it gets lost in the mean, if there's any way to see the distribution is what I think I hear
I was
Lonnie
more
saying.
thinking like, 3%
Right.
scored this a 1, whereas majority of, the
Yeah,
median was a 6 or a
Yeah.
7, and you're like, oh, wait a minute.
We definitely have that information. I have to think about what's the best way to share it.
I mean, it's also like just now we're getting into data analysis, but like even looking at the distribution, right? Like is it bimodal? Like, do you have like, are both means high? So there's just two very different lived experiences in the building, or is everything like center? Like just
By
seeing even,
schools.
yeah, exactly, by schools. Like I think there's
Yeah.
a lot of valuable data in this.
Yes, there is. There is. That's why we did it, and we'll figure out what it means.
If I can, interrupt. Sorry, I was going to mention earlier, and this actually is a good segue to it. We do have a ton of pretty weighty stuff on the agenda. Probably,
You're telling us to keep
probably
quiet. I
generate
get it.
a lot of
I get it.
discussion, so presentations can kind of be concise, and our discussion, not to stop anyone from asking any questions, because obviously that's why we're here. But everybody knows that I can't use words past 7 o'clock, so just to keep things
So
flowing.
bottom line is, I will share data with you at a future time.
Thank
Yep.
you.
All right, thank you very much. Speaking of presentations, we have Director of Student Services, Erica McNeil, with a couple of proposals for emotional and behavioral support. So,
Thanks
no
for being here,
pressure,
Erica.
1 minute. No, I'm just kidding.
Yes and no. I'll start with the probably shorter one, which is the occupational therapy proposal. As we're kind of coming through the end of the year and looking at our IEPs, we are realizing we do need a slight increase in single T time. I would be looking to put that into our IDEA grant, as I can absorb that currently into the IDEA grant, as it was unbudgeted. It would be an additional 0.2 FTE for OT. Questions on that proposal?
Yeah, so basically, because we're asking for an increase of an FTE, that's why we need to ask you, because it's a staffing that we didn't budget for.
So, sorry. So it's grant funded.
The 0.2 would go grant funded.
Okay.
So we currently have somebody who works 3 days a week, and that's in the budget. So basically, they would have a split where 0.2 is going to the grant, the rest is in the budget.
And I don't see this happening because it's IDA, but like if the grant went away, we wouldn't try to fund the 0.2 continually.
Not in the recent time frame. To be quite honest, our IDEA went up around $8,000. We have had an increase of students. If you remember my budget proposals, we are about 20 to 21% of students now being identified. So we're at about 191 students district-wide. Also part of this, we have increased other places with case managers, and that's already in the budget. But this, I really do feel like we can absorb into IDEA for the time being. Looking forward, not next year, but in potential, 2-3 years, we may look to add that to the budget.
I think
we can just approve a contingent to come back if the grant funding falls through.
Yeah, I mean they would have to anyway for the budget.
Okay.
I just get when we start seeing grant funded positions, they're we assume it's free money, and then eventually we end up having to pay for it.
Yeah. Luckily, IDEA is not something that really
Yeah.
goes up and down too much, because there's a whole formula that goes into our IDEA, and it is something that we're given automatically the funds, and we just have to budget for those.
Thank you.
Yeah. The second proposal is for a behavioral support kind of tier 2 program. This is a regular education program that we're looking to start. Also, if you remember from our budget presentation, we have seen an increase with our littles coming in, not really having all the skills that we used to see littles come in with. More students are coming in who are not potty trained, who are not having the social skills to really get into kindergarten and start on day 1. Todd and Patty were meeting with the kindergarten team with building administration throughout the year, talking about some of those concerns. They invited me in a few times to talk about that, and they did some kindergarten screenings to try to figure out where we're at. The second half of this year, we have seen more behavior incidents happening at the school, including more incident reports for staff who are being injured on the job. So we're looking to really flood support to really get our kids early intervention at the young ages, so that then they're ready to learn, because when kids don't have the social skills or other skills to be engaged in the classroom, they're not learning the academic skills that we're looking for them. So it is a heftier price tag for this program. It is Through a contracted service, we'd be looking at just over $105,000. That would get us a full-time person who's trained in ABA, behavior supports, and Tier 1 and Tier 2 strategies to work with students. The whole model is they're training us to do the job that somebody else would normally bring in to do. So it's building internal capacity with our staff, which is what we want. We want to be able to run these programs on our own. And then also a behavior tutor who would be in the room full-time. That person would be highly trained, would have all their restraint training and de-escalation training, so that that person could be there full-time whether a student needed to come in for a break or if they needed to respond to something that was happening in the classroom.
And if I could just add on, one of the things that we have, as Erica pointed out, Patty and I have been meeting particularly with the kindergarten team, but also with the leadership team at the elementary school. And there's no question that there's a population of kids, and by the way, this is not just Newmarket. I mean, it's a national trend that is occurring. I'm sure some of it is tied to the pandemic and the lack of some of the experiences that used to occur for kids. But there has been an increase in kids that have some of these behavioral struggles that are not special education issues, but that they do have a dramatic impact on those kids' ability to perform in the classroom, and it impacts the ability of the teacher to be able to deliver for the kids. And one of the things we looked at, we already have a program at the high school or junior senior high that deals with at-risk population. We have a counseling position that has probably 25 or 30 kids that they are working with on a regular basis to try to, these are not students that are identified with a special education need, but they are kids that are at risk of not being successful. And this is really a similar concept of trying to bring that idea of what we often call a Tier 2 support. It's an ability to provide some behavior management planning, to be able to not only develop the plan, but then to make sure that the plans are followed through on, that everybody who needs to know things is informed, and also to have a place where when kids are having some of these regulatory struggles, there's a place for them to go where there is a person who is trained to help them sort of process through and get to that place. So this idea that kind of has been born of really the last probably 3 months or so of this school year, really seeing firsthand some of the struggles that are occurring and wanting to try to address it in as cost-effective but as direct a way as possible. Now, I know I know you hate to have this conversation, but we had talked about some of our out-of-district placement costs potentially going down.
Yes.
And I know you had, so I know that
Yep.
that's a loaded question, but as of right now, I know you felt you could identify some
Yes.
resources for this.
Just looking at some of the things that have happened with my students in as recently as this morning, it really shifts some of our obligations moving forward in the next year to the point where I feel like I could find the funds in my budget to help support this. We do have to make sure like we are just clear on what is funding for special ed, because they have to be two separate buckets, but I can find the funds within my budget for this. That being said, if a student were to move in 4 months who is out of district, we may look to use the capital reserve funds because what I have today may not be what I have in 12 months.
But one thing I would want to point out is that one of the things we're trying to do is to catch things early and provide the interventions when it's going to be most beneficial. One of the things that we'll experience if we don't figure out a better way to manage some of these issues is that the issues will become greater, and then you probably are at some point looking at an identification and potentially an out-of-district placement that could be costly. Am I
Yep.
accurate
so
about
what
that?
I've done in the past, and I actually use the same organization that I would look to use for this program, it's you start a program in your district, you get the support to get that program up and running, and we train our staff on how to run it. I did this in my second year in the district where I started a program for ABA students with autism because most of our students out of district were identified as autistic. And so we were able to bring a student back from out of district, fund a program, and serve 6 to 8 students for the cost of 1 student out of district. So we're looking to do the same thing, but trying to do it before a student goes out of district this time. When they're little and, you can manage those things, it can be easier. But if this were to continue and we weren't to provide those supports in a couple of years, students are bigger, more staff get hurt. And so really the hope is to get this in early so that we can get the support.
I did have a couple of questions related to that. Was it on the new position? Is that the all-in cost? Is that retirement and everything in that funding?
Yes. Yes.
Now that you're asking, I
That's
want to
all.
double check, but I'm pretty
okay.
sure that was the all-in cost of
Yeah,
a
I
behavior.
can speak to that. So obviously, the contracted service was the quote that they gave you from Constellation.
Yes.
So that's them.
Yep.
The new behavioral tutor position was the all-in
Yep.
cost for a position on the tutor scale to work with staff members, with a $2 differential. exactly.
Obviously determining who we would hire, right?
Yeah. And then the other question, so obviously the earlier the better, right? Get these things. With kids that we've had for pre-K, everyone's different, I get that. Generally speaking, do we see these same behavioral issues when they go into kindergarten?
So just thinking in the recent past, the students that we've really seen kind of give us the most run for our money recently are not students who have been coming to our preschool programs. We have had students show up who never came to preschool and they're,
of course.
whatever you walk in with, you've got. At least when they're in our preschool program, even if we have behavioral needs, at least we know for them and we can plan for them, right? So the prior year, we did have a kind of a cohort of kiddos who needed a little bit more. I added the case management position to offset that need, so we can plan for it better when we know the students. But I wouldn't say currently that's the dynamic where it's just because of preschool that
I guess I'm thinking the earlier we get intervene, the better, and the less expensive. And pre-K is earlier than K, that's pre. So, it's where we invest our funds. But obviously, we're creating pre-K for everyone.
Right. I mean, that
a
certainly
luxury
could be something to talk about for the future. But I think don't forget that our pre-K program is primarily a special education program. So those are kids that
that's a
are
good
being
point.
identified,
Thank
you.
and so
Great point.
that's not the demographic. That
With
this
the
is
exception of a few
right. So
support.
in meeting with the kindergarten teachers, I think there was just compared to previous years, it was a much higher percentage of kids that they could use some behavioral management planning support, and I think that's what this is trying to address. Yeah.
So do we think this is unique to the timing of when they were born related to COVID, or do we think, I know this is hard, right? I'm asking you a very big question.
Yeah.
Is this something that is ongoing? Do we see this is probably going to continue even post the
It's tough to
COVID
point out,
babies?
With the exception of 6 or 4 kids or however many that are, I can't remember the term, of support. It's some non-identified kids who are also joining
Right.
pre-K.
They call
And there's a term
mentor
for that.
students.
Mentor students, thank
Yeah.
you.
Yep.
Yeah, with the exception of them, I don't know if we have.
I guess my question is, we obviously need the support now,
Yep.
right? Right now we need the support. When we create a new position, that is forever, right? So do we think this is a bump that we maybe could bring in a contracted position or something that or do we want to create more headcount, which that's why I'm asking, do we think
Yeah.
this is a bump where it's hey, look, the circumstances of 2020 through 2024 have created a situation where we are seeing just a rise in these tier 2 support needs
And to
that we expect
To that end, I think. the
2026,
contracted services,
2027, they're going to
Yeah.
start filtering down to
It's
what?
just a one-year position, I assume, right?
It's
Yeah,
a
the
1 year?
contracted.
The contracted, I'm only talking.
Contracted is.
and
But
I
the
would-
new position is
Yeah,
what
yeah,
I'm
I hear
talking about.
exactly what
Right.
you're saying. It just made me realize I didn't know.
Yeah, the locally funded position, or the position that would be ours, would be the behavioral tutor. Just a couple of things. Obviously, the contracted service with Constellations provides the training and all that we need to
Yep.
support it. And although we haven't heard yet on the grant that we've applied for, but don't forget, we have applied for a grant that will hopefully give us some behavioral health support. And one of our goals in that is to take a look at the whole continuum of the system and figure out what's the best way to manage some of these things. And there's no question that there are some things that we can do at the classroom level by training our staff and so forth that can help address it. And best situations to work your way out of a job. And I think that's an example of it. If the need changes, obviously our staffing would change.
I do think it's the new normal. Just as a teacher, we see more and more people retiring early because just behaviors are things that can be so unexpected and aren't from even students that you might expect them from because of history or what all kinds of situations. It's I know a lot of teachers, not just of the littles, have just said this past year when you thought everything was kind of like, oh, we're back to normal again, we're here, was really, really challenging behavior-wise.
Your mic slipped down there.
Oh, no.
Sorry about that.
Did you hear any of that?
My thoughts are kind of similar to Phil's in this sense that, if we think this is going to be a persistent need going forward, it'll be less expensive to bring on a person and train them if there's a chance that this is something COVID-related that will pass with time in a year or two, then the contracted services are the better way to go because those are easy to discontinue when you no longer need them.
Well, the hope is that these teachers that are getting trained
I was kind of hoping to get.
are staying.
Well, they would be trained
And I
with contract.
apologize, I can kind of tell, I can see my reflection in the window behind Phil and Lonnie, so I'm lagging about a second relative to.
Yes.
Maybe
It's always going to feel like I'm jumping in late.
Maybe it's just your reflection that's like.
Sorry, go ahead.
So the contracted services would be the training portion, and then they would train the behavioral tutor and everyone else.
Yep.
But I think what Phil and Dan may be asking is, can we also contract out
The behavioral
the
tutor.
behavioral tutor?
Is that, I don't know if that's even a thing.
Does it make sense with our long-term crystal ball total guess of where we're going?
It would be more expensive than
It would be more expensive short run. We would be gambling that it's a point in time need and not an ongoing need.
One thing I can tell you is
I think you're gambling either way.
Oh yeah, totally.
Which way do we, where do we feel like we're headed?
we do typically have para openings. We were at one point where I was fully staffed, and then we slowly started to lose people towards the tail end of the year. But if we were in that position, we could always see if they would be interested in like a tutor behavior and a paraprofessional.
Right.
I can't talk.
Right.
Okay,
So
I understand.
It's not even
Right.
7 o'clock.
Yeah.
I know.
I'm sorry, I know it's a long meeting, but is there any way, I know the rec department does a lot of like stuff for families that don't have their kids in daycare, right? I wonder if there's some way we can collaborate with them around what skills should we be helping teach parents as a community to
But
help get ahead of
those are paid services, right?
There
rec
are,
isn't
but we
free.
also have invited them in for trainings in the past, and
Yeah.
over the summer, our social workers will go and they'll actually go over to the rec
that's
and
great.
work with the kids who are there to try
Yeah.
to again, it's building internal capacity for them as well,
Right.
but it's also supporting our students. So when we do have those opportunities, we do try to utilize those. So the summer camps are a great opportunity for our staff who have additional days in their contracts to get out into the community and try to help support those. There is a lack of childcare. I don't know if other people have ever been recently looking for childcare, but childcare is really tough to come by these days.
That's my totally biased and, assumption is that those people who are having behavioral issues with kids probably can't afford to have their kids go to the rec. It's not a fair assumption, but
or don't even know that
it exists, sure.
or that they should seek that
Sure.
support.
But again, I do think our social workers try to do as much outreach as possible and try to connect kids and families. And I think it's important to know that kind of stuff is also happening. And even with all of that, there still is, at least for now, this population of kids that we're looking at trying to help support in the fall and wanting to make sure we're able to do right by them. So that this proposal came out of that. You don't need to make a decision tonight. So if you want to think on it and come back to it on the 11th, we can do that. But we wanted to just share with you the idea and get your initial feedback.
I think what we need to do is be very fair to you and say, in the next 3 to 5 years, do you expect this to be a blip or do you expect this to be the norm? And I know it's not fair to you.
It is a difficult thing to kind of magic ball. I agree with Lonnie. I do think students are coming in with different needs, and we're constantly trying to figure out how to meet those needs. This is the way we're coming up with to help support our staff and our students at this time. And I think I'm hopeful that we get our grant, because that would get us a district-wide MTSSB person who's running that whole program, like soup to nuts for us. And then that way we can really take a look at, like, okay, so what do we need to do to plan for the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years moving forward, with a real focus on that.
Do we know when we'll know about that grant?
July 30th is the date that we're told we're going to know. I know it's really late.
Yeah.
It's really late for us to hire somebody as well. I was hopeful that we were going to know before we left for school, because then we've got to start the hiring process. So we would even hope that if we do get the grant, then we've got to get everything approved, and then hopefully we'll have somebody in October. But it also gives us additional mental health supports from Seacoast Mental Health. We get a full-time clinician from Seacoast Mental Health with that grant as well.
Great, thank you. Sorry to put you in an uncomfortable position.
No, that's
trying
okay.
to predict the future.
And I kind of answered it and said, hopefully we can
No, you
make
did
a
great.
plan.
You did great. Better
You've
than I
done
would've
good, Erica.
Yeah.
You've done good.
Right.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have Assistant Superintendent Patty Wands here with a literacy program update and student achievement data discussion.
Good evening, everyone. There was a little misprint because there is no achievement data update. That was from the
Okay.
last.
All right, it's
Sorry.
getting shorter anyway.
So
Saw
I
that. I
will
was
be
like,
giving
right.
an achievement data update, but I need all of the data to still feed into the Department of Ed so we can get the town data, our other towns and the neighboring towns, I should say. So I will be brief. I did want to just circle back now that the year is over and start with the elementary school and to give you an update of our literacy program. So our literacy program review team, the pilot ended around, let's see, around February, March, and then we were meeting in April. And every meeting that we had was all about sharing feedback about both of the programs, whether it was from student feedback, teacher feedback, our special educators, our related service providers as well, meeting our reading specialists. And each time we gave feedback, we'd kind of challenge each other's thinking. We'd ask questions to each other. Our literacy program review representatives, they would go back to their grade level teams and share those questions and feedback from our meetings. So in terms of the way we communicated, it was just very positive in the sense of not that we all had to agree with each other, but that the information that we were talking about, we were very transparent with each other. And then I give just a huge thank you to each member of the literacy program review team in keeping up with all of the communication with their grade level partners. We then decided probably around January, February, that we wouldn't take a vote to select our program. Instead, we would really rely on the consensus-based decision-making process. And so in that, we used the protocol, and we were very transparent in the very beginning that what consensus means is I can live with the decision. I will support my colleagues in implementing this decision, and I will do absolutely nothing to impede the implementation of the decision. So with that being said, and like I said, the rounds and rounds of meetings that we had, that last meeting in May was really quite beautiful in terms of how each grade level spoke on which program that their grade level selected. And we just went around and around, and it came to a few grade levels saying, you know what, I totally hear you, and we would be totally fine to go with that program. And it was just such a wonderful example of such a positive collegial experience where educators were just so professional from the very beginning, and this was so important to them, this decision, and they knew the weight that it carried for them to select a program that they knew that Sean and I were not selecting this program, they were selecting the program. So they all had to really believe in what they were selecting. So I just can't give enough gratitude for these educators. So they selected My View Literacy, My View Literacy, which was the second pilot.
Wow.
And they really had very strong opinions and reasons why they selected My View. They felt that the knowledge building base was actually stronger. With the My View Literacy, they felt that the decodable readers, the variety of the text, the stories were much more engaging.
And that was the one without the assessment tool, right?
So the assessment tool, they loved iReady, which was the other program from Magnetic. So we did a vote, and then, so we are going to be implementing the assessment of iReady for reading and math. The teachers just really loved it compared to NWEA in terms of the data, the grouping, and the resources that they get with that. They loved it so much that I was thinking about our 5th graders who were going into 6th grade. So I then met with the math teachers first, and I shared with them iReady, and I let them play with it. We had a demo account, and then they came back and they were like, yes, please, may we have iReady as well? Well, then I said, well, I should meet with the English teachers too. So then I met with the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade ELA teachers, and they too were very positive about it. The middle school really zeroed in on their win block, the what I need block, and because the way iReady is organized in terms of the reports that they give teachers, it almost does the work for them in terms of grouping students by standard or by skills, and then also giving resources as well, and really helping teachers scaffold. And I just remember myself, and when I taught 8th grade ELA, and we were also at NWEA school, yes, I loved the RIT score and all that, and they would group my students, but what it was lacking is the resources, and just having that time. You all know there's not enough time in the day to ask teachers to go out and to find all these different resources to support different levels of learning in the classroom. And that's what iReady really offers, and the teachers just really loved that piece.
And it must be great being able to have a history of a student going back that they can look at.
Yeah.
6th, 7th, 8th.
So it'll be nice for our 5th grader, our 6th graders to, and the kids, like the feedback from the kids of iReady, they were just, they told us hands down, they much appreciated that assessment than NWEA.
I also think that because the teachers are so enthusiastic about the change, one of the challenges to doing any kind of standardized assessment is getting people to actually use the data in a meaningful way. And I think there's a built-in motivation to use this information in a way that is helping with instruction. So rather than having NEWA, which I think has had great value, but it has been much more of a standalone, here's how our kids are doing 3 times a year. This is much more tied to ongoing performance.
It really is, and there are resources for teachers as well that our elementary teachers totally embraced, which was explaining the kids why they were taking it. And it was just a few little slides they have by grade bands, just to explain to them, we want you to do your best so we know all the things that you know, and then all the things that you need more support in. And they really broke it down to appropriateness of grade level, but really getting the kids to buy into it. So that was exciting. So now, what do we do with all of that K2 Super Kids materials? We have a lot in each grade level. So I'm really pleased to share, and hopefully with your support, that we will be donating all of the K2, and there is a lot, of materials to Haverhill Promise. And Haverhill Promise is a nonprofit organization. It's directly linked to the Haverhill Public Schools in Haverhill, Massachusetts. And their goal is to play a direct role in ensuring that all Haverhill students have the tools necessary to achieve grade level reading by the end of 3rd grade. So when I met with Jessica Killen, Dr. Killen, she was just so thrilled that she's already come over once to the school to see everything. But we're really excited. The teachers, I think, felt really grateful that all their resources weren't going into a recycle bin somewhere, but yet they were actually going to kids in need. And so we are really pleased to share that. Excited. And then I just want to let you know that 60 teachers in our entire district are engaging in summer work. I use the kind of the last bits of the ESSER 3 funding, which is nearly $32,000 that we are funding to compensate our teachers for working this summer. So teachers are working anywhere from 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 days. At the elementary, their focus has been the new MyView literacy and also some math work as well. And at the elementary, we have some new teams. So teams are getting together. We have some teachers switching grade levels, money there. We also have a whole group of teachers working on freshman seminar. I know I'm forgetting some. But anyway, there's just such a wide range. Oh, from our NES committees as well. There's a wide range of group. And our focus for summer work was that it had to be collaborative and your request had to support your school growth plan. And so all of their requests did. So we're really excited for that. And then lastly, the mentor program. Every year we offer, now that we have a new mentor program, training for teachers who meet the criteria to be trained to be a mentor to a new teacher. So last year, I trained 20 educators, and this year we have 12 new educators who want to be mentors as well. And that training will be in August. So we are busy in a
Thank
good
you
way.
very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks, Patty.
The next two presentations are by Business Administrator Jenna Mellon. Jenna, do you want to join us up here at the dais? You're going to be standing for a long time, I feel. Why don't you just come up here and sit?
Right in front of
silly to
Dan.
have you
I just pull a mic over
there.
there, give her a
Yeah.
mic.
A couple mics. You can sit on that. Ooh, for you. And we'll make you Amy Tilton's.
Dan, you look larger than life up there. You're so big on that screen.
You probably can just pull the mic up close to you, or you can wear the lapel mic, either one, whatever works.
Hi, thank you. Hope everyone's all right with that.
That's
Should have asked.
absolutely.
I appreciate it. I do miss good podium.
Yeah, right?
So would you like me to start with the handbook
Yeah.
first? Okay.
That's perfect.
So before I did hear your message loud and clear about, kind of keep condensing things, but I would be remiss if I didn't start off by telling everybody how impressed I was and how grateful we are for the people that volunteered on this committee. I mean, a handbook is not like the most fun thing to go through, but we had a very dedicated group. We had great conversations. Everyone came with the idea that we were working together to build something that was going to be representative of what it means to be a Newmarket mule, right, and on the employee side. And there were lots of conversations where we had differing opinions, but everybody, I just can't speak highly enough about the collaborative nature of putting this together. We had 3 overriding goals. One was we wanted to make sure it was compliant from a legal standpoint, so we had attorney vetted twice. The second thing is we wanted to rectify some disparities that had grown over the years within the same categories of employees relative to benefits and things that were offered. So we wanted to, that never feels good or looks good, so we wanted to rectify that. And then finally, we really wanted to support our vision of a graduate from the employee side and bring in those standards of how do we work in Newmarket? What do we expect from ourselves, and how do we treat other people? So they're basically, we didn't have a great, there are several different models of things that we were trying to bring together into one, and the goal was to have one handbook that really addressed every employee in the district, even those that were collectively bargained. And if there were differences, we specified that and said, if you're collectively bargained, refer to your agreement. But the norms and the culture and how we treat each other and how we operate, we wanted something that met everyone's at where they were at. So there were a few changes that are not encapsulated in those things. Some we aligned with policy. I'm not going to go through all the different ones that did that. Some that aligned with new law. I mean, that we had to do it anyways. But I highlighted just a handful here of things that were changes. Two changes around the holidays. Our holiday list was very old. It didn't include Indigenous Peoples' Day or Juneteenth because, frankly, that didn't become a federal holiday until recently. So what we tried to do is we have school year staff that are outside of collective bargaining, and then we have year-round staff. So we tried to make, in our old model, we paid school year staff on July 4th as a holiday, but most of them weren't working. It just made no sense to have it. So what we did is we defined Juneteenth as that holiday. They also had 2 floaters. We took one of those floaters and turned it into Indigenous Peoples' Day. So they still have the same number of holidays. It's just that now they align with the actual work year, and they still do have one floating holiday that they can choose where that goes. For year-round staff, we have been trying to focus on the board's goal of attracting and retaining good staff. So we proposed expanding from 12 holidays. Everybody used to have 12, but giving those year-round people 14 holidays. Again, clearly defining them so that they also get Juneteenth and Columbus Day as a means to kind of make it an attractive place to come and work and be. We increased the maximum amount of sick days that you can accrue for 2 reasons. One, we had disparity again. So we went with the higher level, but two, the intention of sick days is really a bridge to get somebody from an injury to a long-term disability or that. So we wanted to make sure that if we were going to expand that, we wanted to make sure we gave people an adequate amount of sick days that they could accrue to get them through a hard time. So it's employee-centered thought. Standardizing, allowing the $500 insurance buyback for administrators that choose not to take the insurance because they were the only group that was carved out. Just seemed to make sense. One of the newer policies that may prove to be a little bit controversial is a fragrances in the workplace. We addressed it. We have had several incidents where staff or even a board member at one point had some sensitivities to some fragrances, and so we're trying to address it in a way that's not punitive, but just letting people know that for some people that is really uncomfortable, and it does create an uncomfortable work environment. One of the things that I'm most excited about is we added a guiding principles section, which again, we had a lot of talk about how that ties to the vision of a graduate, but it really is concise. It means something to anybody, whether you're working in the kitchen or whether you're an administrator. All of those principles kind of apply to everybody. And then finally, we aligned our bereavement leave for everybody that's not in the NTA, because theirs is coming up for negotiation, but so we aligned it with what we had written in for the para agreement. So now we have most of the district with one definition of which family members are covered by bereavement. We're hoping that maybe as a part of the bargaining, we can fully unify so that everybody gets the same benefit. So that's kind of the high notes of it, where we are hoping that the board will be able to vote to accept it tonight, because we really would like to change that holiday schedule effective July 1st, so that going forward everything is clean that way. If there are edits or things that we need to make, we certainly can do that, but I would like at least that for those pieces, if the board could vote to make that change.
I think it's important that that there be consistency across the district, but that we try to pull some of these things out of the contracts and put them in the handbooks so that, holidays and sick days and stuff like that, it just doesn't make sense to negotiate some of those things. And we did, I think with the parents, we had a little bit in that direction.
Yeah.
But just with the July 1st, you want it effective by July 1st, does that impact teachers who have had July 4th as a holiday?
Teachers don't get holidays, so this is really just for...
Oh, sorry, not teachers. I'm sorry, you're right. It's for staff. Yeah. Sorry,
Yeah.
my head goes right to...
Yeah. So in the past, they wouldn't work the week of July 4th, but they'd have to fill out a time card so we could pay them for the holiday. So now what we've done is just saying July 1st, you're not going to get paid for July 4th, but you are going to get paid for Columbus Day, and you'll get Juneteenth next year.
Okay.
You're still going to get 12 holidays.
Right.
It's just shifting them.
It's just shifting it, so they're not losing it. It's not.
Nope.
It's not like an accounting switch and they lose a day.
Nope,
Okay,
they're
that's what I
not
was
losing a day. They're going to get all 12 holidays this year.
I did really appreciate that there were so many if you are part of a collective bargaining agreement, refer to that.
Yep.
And I don't say that facetiously, just because there's no margin for misinterpreting that. So it was just even a few things that I was like, oh, and then I would read a few more lines down and it said, or this, refer to your contract. So I think you made that airtight.
I did have a couple items. I think Dan had some items that we had questions on.
Yeah, Gary, do you want to do this like a page turn, or how do you want to proceed through it?
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, my first one's on page 12. What's your first item?
Todd, would you make the notes?
Well, on page 8, this isn't really a suggestion. I just wanted to say I like the guiding principles so much. This would be a great starting point if we want to rethink the district's mission statement, which at this point has been there for rather a long time, and I'm not sure how well it continues to serve us. So.
Right. On page 12, I did notice a tiny thing. I think it should be the letter C, the capital C, and the lowercase c should actually be a 3. I think, because there's section 1, 2, and then 3.
You show me, because I'm going to take notes on it.
Fine.
Yep.
So on
Numbering
page
that off.
8, it should be, it's 1,
Oh, gotcha. Yep.
1, 2, and then it's C,
Oh, gotcha.
which is the way I think, but I'm not the way most people think.
Okay.
What else did you have, Dan? I didn't have anything for a while.
I had on page 14, this is more a question, I guess. The last line of page 14 that explains that staff are required to notify building principals if they expect abuse or neglect. Right before that is quoting the state law, which certainly reads to me as though this is a responsibility that's incumbent on an individual. Does notifying the building principal satisfy that requirement under law? I just don't want to create a conflicting situation where someone feels like the fact that they notified the building principal fulfilled their obligation under law, and then it turns out, no, they actually should have gone directly to the authorities.
I think what we were going for there, you gotta do both, right? Because the last thing we want somebody to do is report neglect at the state level, but not have a conversation with the building principal. So I think we were trying to say that our policy says that you need to do this. That's the state law, and that you're mandated to do that. But just because we would never want to not know that somebody had filed a report for a student.
Yeah, I absolutely am on board with the idea of doing both. It maybe could be a little clearer, or if the idea here is that the principal is going to facilitate the reporting to the state or to the local authorities, then whatever we're envisioning here, I like it if we could spell it out a little more
Could be
clearly.
in addition to.
Yeah.
Just the word also
Yeah.
requires that employees also.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Notify.
the intent there is that most people are not experienced at making these reports, and they need a little bit of hand-holding to kind of walk through it. So when you say you're a mandatory report,
Again, I'm
yeah.
completely on board with that, but I just want to make it
Yep.
extremely clear how we're expecting this to happen, because if we find ourselves in this situation, we got to make sure we do it right.
Yeah, we can definitely make that edit.
I'm on page 17 next. Anything before that?
Go ahead.
There's a few places that that include this, and I think we need to clarify. So, page 17 under confidential information, at the very last line, it talks about the authority and scope of their job expressly authorized by the superintendent, school district superintendent, or school board chairperson. So there's several places that reference school board chairperson. The chair has no authority in certainly instructing or authorizing any member of the staff to discuss things with the media or bring up confidential information. And in fact, if I or any member of the board asked, I hope they would tell us to pound sand, because we certainly should never be doing that. So maybe we can strike or school board chairperson.
Yep, that absolutely can be done. I do want to just point out that in the very recent past, there was a period of time where there was no superintendent for a period of time, and you appointed somebody
Fair point.
to do that, which is not to say that that's a standard practice, but there could be a situation where that was the case. This is a
hierarchy within the district.
Right.
Then,
This
right?
is a general handbook, so it doesn't necessarily need to be reflected there. But I think an understanding that that situation could happen. I agree. There isn't on a daily basis. There is nothing.
But if we don't have a superintendent, I mean, now we have assistant superintendent, but even after
Right.
that, I would assume there's
Yeah.
a certain
Yeah.
chain of
Exactly.
command that should be handling those situations.
Yes,
I'm certainly not qualified, and maybe a different chairperson. Maybe, I am certainly not qualified
But
to make any.
I think we absolutely can make those edits and remove or chairperson from all. In fact, you and I chatted a little bit, Gary. I mean, I think there were 6 or 7 references there. Those can be redacted, and it'll stop at superintendent.
Thank you. What else do you have, Dan?
My next one's on page 20. You have anything before that?
No. No, and I think Todd just took care of all mine.
On curricular pay, coaching, and other forms of compensation, second sentence. No work on any co-curricular assignment should be performed until the assignment has been approved and a contract has been issued. Do we mean, in that case, no work that the district is expected to pay for? Because I can think of a lot of examples where people pitch in and help out with, less of the sport and coaching, more so than like the school play, for instance. I mean, we didn't write a contract for that, nobody approved it, we're not paying the person for it, but we sure appreciate, them getting involved and helping out. The sentence reads as kind of overly broad and prohibitive.
I mean, could it just say no work on any paid co-curricular assignment?
Yeah, because I think what you're talking about is
If it's an
volunteer.
assignment, it's implied that they're
paid.
employed, yeah, it might be.
But we could clarify it and say paid. But, I mean, we do have a volunteer policy that we didn't really address in here, because
Oh, that's
it's
true, this
for
is the employee
the
handbook, yeah, good
So,
point. Yeah.
But yeah, we do have a mechanism for having volunteers. They wouldn't be getting a contract from us.
And you don't want somebody
Yeah,
saying,
I
well, I'm
understand.
going to have this club 5 days a week for 4 weeks. And then, well, I did it, so I'm
Right.
deserve to be
Yeah.
paid for my time.
Right.
But yeah, we can add the word paid. Yep.
Yeah.
All right, I'm good on page 30 at this point.
Yeah, I don't think, let me see. Here's, we talked about the chain of command. Again, it was talking about grievance practice. And then I just asked, I'm not sure exactly why I asked this, I said, but why would the board get involved, perhaps to revise, perhaps we should revise it, and then concern should be directed to the superintendent, and then the school board if necessary. There was a reference, and I apologize, I didn't put it in the correct location. The business administrator is unable to, here it is. If the business administrator, it's the second to last sentence in the paragraph in the chain of command. If the business administrator is unable to be contacted due to any of the reasons listed above, I would think it should be any reasons, but whatever, then concern should be directed to first to the superintendent and then to the school board. And then I feel like it should say, that makes it sound like it both have to happen, whereas I feel like it should say if necessary, to the school
Yep.
board if necessary.
And if necessary.
Yep, that's a good
Or
point.
however.
Yep, that makes sense.
Whoops. Yeah. I was talking about pets, but no, it's fine. Don't worry about that.
I do think we should.
I did ask if there was a district policy. Again, I don't have anything till quite a ways down.
All right, the section, page 30, last paragraph, where we get into weapons, I understand the intent and what we're trying to accomplish here. I'm a little worried by how precisely we're wording some of this, that we're aiming ourselves into a potentially uncomfortable corner. I know you say included but not limited to, but I'm not sure how much you necessarily want to get into that, and then you're excluding pocket knives, utility knives.
Well,
How does that relate to the standard of,
well, in the
I'm
kitchen,
not sure
they're,
we want those things in the school, period.
well, in the kitchen, I presume that they're using utility knives to open boxes.
Yeah.
In shop, maybe they have a pocket knife,
I mean, like maintenance, right?
Yeah,
maintenance,
repairing.
custodial staff, yeah.
Yeah, all right,
Oh, it even says right here,
As I read
or other
through it, I had
instruments.
this
Yeah.
reaction that we're being oddly specific, and that's
Excluding,
often where you get into trouble. But if you're comfortable with it, I'm just thought I'd raise the concern.
Well, I do think our policy, if you go to, is pretty specific with regards to, so it's
Okay.
using policy and law language.
All right, then I'm good until page 36.
Martial arts paraphernalia could be a bit vague, but I get your point.
Yeah, I kind of wondered if somebody showed up to school dressed in a gi, would that count, or?
Yeah. I guess if someone reported fists are deadly weapons. Yeah, you can't even remember. On page 40, I mentioned something.
All right, I'm looking for 36, if you don't
Oh,
mind.
please,
jumping
please,
in.
please.
Is that all right, Gary?
Yeah, please.
Okay, sorry. Sometimes the audio gets a little crossed. district communication, I think it's the second to last sentence, all staff have access to a computer and or device for this purpose. Is that true of support staff as well?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Okay, all right, just was checking.
And all,
Thank you.
including all of our facilities technicians, they have a district issued device.
Okay. On page 37, I'm sorry, what did I write here? So social media gets very sticky. It's just something we've been dealing with at work a fair bit lately. This sentence, additionally, the Newmarket School District reserves the right to take disciplinary action against you up to and including termination in the event your use of social media, whether on duty or off duty, unduly interferes with the Newmarket School District's legitimate interests as an employer in managing the workforce. How would that relate to, say, somebody leaving a negative review of their work experience on Glassdoor or Indeed or a site like that?
I don't think it's intended to present, we can't prohibit that kind of speech. I think this is talking about specifically preventing the district from being able to function, whether, calling up.
Yeah, it talks about legitimate interests as an employer as opposed to being able to hire someone. I mean, Glassdoor would maybe prevent you from getting as many applicants, but I don't think it would prevent you from any legitimate interest as an employer.
Okay. I mean, again, as long as you have thought through it and council is comfortable with it, I'm
Right.
fine. It just struck me as maybe a bit slippery there. Page 38, it's that last sentence under some page. Employees may not trespass or solicit or distribute material anywhere on district property at any time. How would this relate to like an arts and crafts fair?
Sorry, Dan, could you give us,
Specifically invite people in.
could you give us the
I'm sorry, I'm at the top of page 38.
Okay, all right.
Oh, okay.
Can you scroll, what's the title of that section?
Solicitation and
Solicitation and
The
distribution.
section starts on page 37, solicitation and distribution, and it's that last sentence that, we're not allowing people to solicit or distribute materials in kind on district property. And my first thought when I read that is, well, what about an arts and crafts fair?
But what are you soliciting in an arts and crafts fair?
Yeah.
Because the,
You're selling.
well, it's fair. Are you soliciting, you distributing solicitation? Well, I guess you are soliciting. But.
I mean, clearly, we have policies that guide us in terms of acceptable fundraising activities. And so the assumption would be anything that we would be doing that was in line with our policies to support a program would not be in the category of an annoyance, although that's debatable. But I think what we're looking at is the type of solicitations that are not necessarily school-sponsored activities and/or, you're right, Doug. I mean, we have, I don't know, any fundraiser we do, there is an element of solicitation in it.
So, but this is the employee handbook.
Correct.
So I think that non-employees would go back to policy KH that covers fundraisers.
Right.
Okay.
And I think really what this is more geared to is like somebody who has a, I don't know, a side business, and they want to distribute flyers for their side business. Yeah.
I guess the point, Dan, though, why do we even have a line about non-employees in the employee handbook?
You could strike it.
Yeah. Unless that's to clarify it for employees, but fair point.
And there's a policy.
And we can strike that.
I guess it's more of a curious question. Is there a reason we had it in there?
I mean, some of this language came from a template from the attorneys. We massaged it, and I can't tell you specifically which part that came from. Can tell you that we had an attorney read the whole thing in its entirety at the end when we were done making changes.
But there was no robust conversation about including that
No,
one.
we did not talk about that. It was just part of the standard language that we kind of captured for that section.
Okay. second paragraph under
But it should be in a
computers,
district
internet,
policy.
email, and other resources, that last sentence, your communications may be accessed without further notice by information technology. I mean, that implies that we even need notice in the first place. I'd strike the word further.
Can you
Yeah.
can you tell me where that is again, Dan?
You skipped a little bit.
That is, last of the second paragraph under computers, internet, email, and other resources on page 38.
Our communications may be accessed without further notice. It's the last line of the second paragraph.
Oh, okay, got it.
So does it describe, I guess your question is on notification. Does it talk about notification previous to it? Are you saying?
Well,
I think,
it should be noted that when an employee is hired, they agree to what's called acceptable use of technology, and they're agreeing to all of the appropriate behaviors and know that it's not, that their device is district-owned and it's not their personal property. So that's the first notice, and then further notice or,
I was reading it as that, I was reading it that this policy was the first notice. The handbook was the first notice. That's the way I was reading it. Like, it was saying further notice pursuant to the paragraph that you just read before it.
Right. Yeah, we get, the word further can be dropped from that.
Yeah, I'm not going to die on a hill for further.
Same section, the paragraph that starts, the district encourages employees to use email only to communicate with fellow employees, suppliers, or other professional contacts. I would throw students and parents into that sentence. Because we do encourage teachers to respond to their email when emailed by a student or a parent.
Yep.
Or guardian.
Oh, great.
That works as well, just the rest the way it's written right now. All right, and then I promise, well, I don't have to promise you, this is my last one. It's on page 39, the paragraph that begins, the district reserves the right to monitor calls to ensure employees abide by district quality guidelines. That whole paragraph is,
Got it.
it's page 39, it's.
Yep, I got it.
The third full paragraph. New Hampshire is a two-party consent state. Sorry, it's an all-party consent state for recording communications. So we reserve the right, I would just maybe put something in there about, to the extent allowed by law. We may reserve the right as between us and the employee. We do not have the unilateral right to record phone calls in the state of New Hampshire.
I don't think it
But-
says
Yeah, it's
recording.
saying
says
listening.
Monitoring.
It doesn't mention it.
That's like quality control.
Fair, but I mean, the most common way that you're going to monitor something is to record it and replay it. So I want to be real careful with that one because people, with Liberty or Fidelity, one or the other, got in a lot of trouble for this about 10 years ago with their call center up in Merrimack.
Can we do that?
Because they,
Be on speakerphone with a tutor,
Right,
a tutor.
I don't think we have a recording mechanism. on
No,
our
no,
line,
but would we ever
but-
monitor?
But if somebody was in a classroom having a conversation, then.
An intern was talking to a parent.
I don't think there's any problem with adding the phrase "to the extent allowed by law" to that. I mean, obviously, we're not going to do anything that is in violation of the law. Yep.
yeah. Right, and that's all I got. Thank you.
The next one, I apologize, it's not something I'm going to set aside, but just the time off and for unpaid leave. Just the fact it comes to the board does seem so unnecessary. I mean, I guess it depends on how much unpaid leave you're talking about, but
Yeah, it's in both of the bargaining agreements.
Yeah.
So I think that's definitely something we could look at taking out, but it seems ridiculous for us to just require collectively bargained people.
no, I completely agree.
You
If
know,
it's in there,
yeah.
we need to keep it in here. Absolutely,
Yeah.
100%. Yeah,
We're trying to get to a place where there's a process for everybody,
yeah, I completely agree. And I think that was it there's any other references to chairperson. I think that
No,
was
well, chairperson is gone.
Yeah,
We'll
we'll
mention
figure
that.
that
out. All right.
Yep.
Thank you. I don't want to speak for future chair people, but I just don't think it's
Well, the beauty of the handbook is this will be annually reviewed, so if at any time we decide we want to add you back in, we can add you
if you have a
back in.
chairperson you trust for handling these situations, you want to add it back in.
In fact, that we are hoping that this will become part of what we do when we redo our student handbooks, that this becomes a regular thing. So
Great.
that if things arise during the year, we could propose changes or recommendations at that time. But to keep it current and keep it fresh and make sure that what we have in there is relevant.
Right.
So would everyone be comfortable, I mean, we could have additional discussions when we get there, but voting on this tonight with the few amendments that we discussed? All right. I'm going to assume that Dan's, oh yeah, you are moving, okay.
Okay.
No, if you're freezing.
No,
Yep. With that, we can move.
subject to the edits that I feel like we agreed to, yeah, I'm comfortable.
Great. All right, let's move right into Q4 financials.
Okay.
Sorry, I do have to make one statement. Oh, just as a reminder, Dan asked for level services, and we're going to get those in July, the first meeting in July. So,
Okay.
level services funding, sorry.
Yeah.
Todd told me, and I want to make sure I got that.
Okay. Okay, so this is always the report that at least I put the most amount of time and thought into, because what I try to give to you is a high-level sense of where we're coming in based on where we thought we were going to be when we budgeted, but also giving you an idea of what some of our challenges might be coming down the road. So, you know, the format of this is very similar. We look at our expenditures, we look at our revenues, but in this report, we start getting onto the balance sheet type of things, which is our fund balance, right? So we don't usually talk about that. The reports, I'm not going to go too far. The expenditure reports, you guys have seen those a bunch of times. The revenue reports, you understand all of that. So I think I'd like, and then you may have questions, so I want to be mindful of time. But I will focus on the estimated fiscal year cost to complete as of May 31st.
Sorry, can I, you are presenting this earlier than you normally would, but that's because we wanted to get the fund balance decision.
I think I want to get a retained fund balance vote from you before the close of the year.
Yeah.
But I find that it's a lot to ask of you to make that assessment until you know kind of where we're coming in. And so with the caveat that my crystal ball is opaque.
Yeah, so we're
this
basically
is-
1 month shy of actual numbers.
Right.
But
Right.
this is based on Jana's best.
Right, and it's based on what I
Yeah.
know, it's based on what I've analyzed out of the system. That said, we could have some other things that come in that change this, but this is our best estimate of where we're coming in. And as long as everybody takes it with that grain of salt, the only action item we'll be asking you to take based off of this is to vote on the percentage of the retained fund balance, but the language of that is up to a certain percentage. So it gives us the ability to mitigate that if need be. So at this time, the general fund estimated balance, and I talk a little bit how I get to that number. I'm estimating that we will have ending the year before making accounting adjustments about $620,000. So that number is made up of several things. It's made up of our unexpended expenditure balance. It's made up of additional revenues that we get that are beyond what we budgeted. And so when we look at that it's just that. It's an estimate. It's our best estimate at this time. It does not take into consideration things like the 2 warrant articles that we hoped to fund from fund balance, right? This is the number that we would start with before those types of adjustments. So the other 2 things that I wanted to mention, like looking down the road, so that's kind of where we are now, our picture of what we're looking at, we think, come June. And then looking further down the road, a couple of things that are noteworthy, and I've addressed them later on in the report. One of them, House Bill 1279, surprisingly is still alive. That is a bill that would allow 7.5% contribution to teacher retirement on the employer side from the state. We have not enjoyed in many, many years, I believe it's been 20, upwards of 20. We had a 1 year where they did it, and frankly, it created some issues for us. It was just a 1 year non-memorialized, non-standardized thing. And what it did is it played with our tax rate because we got something 1 year that they then took away the next year. So keeping things static, the next year looked like we had a higher impact, right? So unless they permanently memorialize it, playing with that is probably not the best or the easiest thing for districts to manage. So that's still alive. I think it's probably unlikely that it's going to pass, but if it did, it might result in about $140,000 annually to the district, which would be a really helpful thing. Our federal grant allocations, I've put a chart in here kind of showing you the last 3 years. I started with 22-23 because the COVID picture is a little wonky. I figured it's better to look at something a little bit more standard. Overall, we're going to lose $25,000 from last year to this year in our big four, the IDEA, Title I, Title II, and Title IV. As Erica indicated, IDEA is going up by 8,000, but our Title I is going down by almost 27,000. So that's kind of where we're seeing that discrepancy. And I just say this because, to Phil's point earlier, when we have some positions that are grant funded, they've been grant funded for many, many years. But eventually, if things change too much with that, we may not be able to keep that full FTE in that grant funding. So we do monitor this carefully. We use it as a projected kind of a way of looking at what we have coming down the road. So with that, because I know you're probably going to want to talk about the fund balance, do you have any questions for me relative to the financials that I presented?
Kudos for estimating within 2.5%, a year and a half ahead of when you're going to spend it.
Do you want me to just go right
I
ahead?
want to make sure I've got the right understanding. So the total amount we have available from which to fund warrant articles and potentially retain is the sum of the unexpended appropriation, the 620K, plus the amount that we voted to retain last year. Is that correct?
Yes, pretty much. So the first thing that you
add in like 1.2 million-ish.
well, the first thing that you do when you end the year is you give back the retained balance that you didn't use. So 688 will go back. So yes, temporarily it goes up, but then you immediately retain your next year. So in this case, we'd be asked, it would be a $78,000 up of that would be the difference, the net of those two. I hope that answers your question.
So to get to the 3.5%, which is what we set it last year, the 688 was 3.5% of last year. To do 3.5% of this year, it needs to be increased by 78,000. So if you can imagine, so to go back to your question, Dan, we have 688,000 in the retained fund balance and 620 in the year-end fund balance combined. That's 1,308,000
For a second.
For a second, but then 688 has to go back. So we have to then just say, okay, how much of the 620 do we want to use to bring the retained fund balance up to 3.5%, which is $78,000.
Right. And then after that, the warrant articles come off after that part. We have to have a balance before we know if we can fund any of them.
So that would amount to returning like close to 600 minus what we retain for warrant articles?
Right. We have 125 in warrant articles that are funded potentially from fund balance if funds exist. One of them, it was raised and appropriated. The capital improvement one is a separate thing, standalone. So that would not need to be. So, we've been talking about this for a while, probably since the September ones, that this is a different year, right? We're coming in pretty close, but I also think that we're coming in to what we were asked to do, which we've been asked to budget closer. We've been asked to not return so as much, right? We had some strangeness with COVID that we worked pretty well at. And I want to also remind the board, you made some really good decisions last year relative to keeping things flat because we did have an extra surplus, but we voted to choose to use those to pay for some things that we were going to tap the capital reserve for. You shifted that money. And the net effect of that is that what we turned last year was a little over 700. And this year it may be, 450, 480, right? But it's a whole lot better than if we'd returned the whole shooting match last year, then you'd be looking at a hill.
Way more consistent for the taxpayers.
Right.
Just
Can I just clarify? It's not that we're returning less. We're borrowing less than initially, so there's less to return.
Right.
Because I don't want the taxpayers to think that we're keeping
Right.
more money. We're not.
We're
There's
budgeting
less money
closer on the
being-
front end, so
Exactly.
there's less.
To be returned.
To be returned.
Exactly.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
yeah, we didn't overtax as much.
Exactly.
Right,
Right.
right.
I don't know if overtax is the right term, but it's the correct
Yeah,
term.
I mean-
It's the correct term. It's the correct term, but
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
my,
none of the above was a value judgment. I was just trying to make sure I understood the basic math correctly.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
yeah, you're welcome. So my recommendation this year, last year, if you recall, you voted to increase from 2.5% retained balance to 3.5%, which I think is a good thing. It would be great to get us to a 5% where we're just retaining 5%. That would be a great insurance policy, but you got to have a hill to climb to get to that, which means you have to have a surplus at the end. We were able to do it last year. I wouldn't recommend increasing beyond the 3.5 this year, given where we're coming in. But I also wouldn't recommend dropping below it for a couple reasons. One, it's very difficult if you drop lower, you're looking now at a net of a $78,000 difference, right? So if you drop to the 2.5%, the next time you're going to get back to 3.5, now you're looking at having $200,000 of surplus to get back. So it's a bigger hill to climb. The other thing, as much as it pains me to admit it, we still have an ongoing issue relative to tax forms that were submitted a few years ago. It's active. We have counsel involved. It's still ongoing, but we don't have a resolution. And knowing that what it was 108,000 2 years ago, if the decision doesn't go in our favor, there will be penalties and interest on top of that. So I just think that we need to be mindful, we're not raising it in our operating budget, which is, not what we want to do, but I think we do need to keep that retained fund balance where it is for right now. Maybe down the road, we look at, if we have another year where we have some changes, we can look at it again, but I think certainly for this year, this wouldn't be the year I'd recommend to look at lowering it.
And we have to give you a percentage, but it doesn't have to be
Right, I can't take.
a 0.5%. We can say 800,000 and turn that into a percentage if we wanted to give ourselves a buffer in case the IRS rules against us or something.
They generally want you to do it in the form of a percentage.
Well, yeah, absolutely. It would be a
Right.
percentage.
Right.
But you're asking for 3.5%.
Yeah, but I'm saying we could do 3.6% to give ourselves a little buffer if we wanted to.
Oh, yeah, you can pick any percentage between 0 and 5.
Yeah.
But.
That was my point, yeah.
Yeah. The board can, at your discretion, you can pick any percentage.
Because I certainly don't want to go to 5, but your point about the IRS is a little concerning. But that could be 10 years from now.
Right, I mean.
And it probably will be.
So it's just something that, we got to keep it in mind. Unfortunately, it's just taking a long time to resolve, but
Yeah.
it's definitely something that it would be unfortunate to let it fall off the radar and forget about it. So
Okay.
does anyone have any questions on that recommendation or how I've included the actual statute so you can kind of see where we got to and how we got there?
No? Anyone else? No?
All
I
right.
think we're good. Thank you so much,
All
Jenna.
right, you're welcome.
Thanks,
Thank
Jana.
you for letting me use my red podium.
Sure.
And while Jen is stepping away, I did want to just take a minute to just say thank you to her for the great work she did on the handbook committee. She's also been helping shepherd the employee benefits committee, in addition to obviously the great stuff she does every day in our finance office. So just thank you, Jenna.
Absolutely. All right. Head down into discussion items, correspondence. I did receive one correspondence that was very favorable about a staff member in the district.
Oh,
I seem to have a dichotomy. Wow. See what next week brings.
And one writes and just says, everything's okay.
Yeah, that'd be perfect. And then we have the school board committee goals. We have a draft that we were provided last week, and we agreed to come back this week with ideas of any changes or edits, and push through and get this done. So does anyone have any, excuse me, suggestions, edits, ideas, thoughts?
So my only, is in goal 1, is that the way it writes is work with district leadership to develop a metric that goes beyond standardized test scores. Like, I think it's metrics.
I caught that too. Yeah.
There will be no silver bullet metric for us.
Yeah, and I was questioning, what specifically are we tracking? What progress towards vision of a graduate alignment are we tracking?
I think that's the work of the goal, is figuring that out.
Yeah, I don't think we
Oh,
actually
I
have
see
the
what you're
answer to it. Initially the goal was what percentage, but again, that asks the question, percentage of what?
Yeah.
Because you still have to identify what it is you're measuring. So I don't think we have the measuring stick yet. And I think that's.
And I think that when we
Is
say
there even a measuring stick possible?
I think there is measuring
Yeah,
stick possible. I think we're crafting a new stick.
All encompassing.
Yeah, all-encompassing.
There you go.
It's an all-encompassing stick. So when we say goes beyond standardized test scores, I don't think that means, this is my read of it, like that ignores standardized test scores. I think it's just saying it's like more
yeah.
than just.
I completely agree.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're all on the
I
line.
agree.
Okay. Then I'm good with it.
Where you say reflects more than.
Yeah,
or
reflects more.
acknowledges more than.
Sure.
I love the
You could
second
say
one.
something like it expands on, or expands beyond standardized test scores, just to make it imply that that's still part of
Yeah.
the package.
I mean, and ultimately, these are our goals, so as long as we collectively agree on the meaning of
true.
it, that's what really matters.
That's true.
True.
That's what I was thinking about the wording for the second one, not to jump if people have more to say on the first
No,
one.
I
but
was curious about
The
it.
second one is my favorite one. And the fact that it has activities like that include this. So, we can come up with additional things that support the communication strategy. that
What's our
not limit
baseline measure?
ourselves.
What's that?
For their 10%.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
Great
you write
videos
that one?
Superintendent Howard put together.
You could start with something, even just like attendance.
I don't think I was the creator of the 10%.
Yeah,
Because my immediate reaction was, as measured how?
yeah.
I mean, I'm not looking to hugely split hairs on this because we get really specific in items A and B as to what we want to do, how we want to go about it.
Yeah,
But
I don't want to redo these, but it strikes me that
Yeah.
at certain levels of leadership, and I hate to use the word leadership, but that's in essence what we are, your goals aren't really necessarily measurable, or they're more opaquely sort of measurable. It's like it's hard to necessarily nuance a goal, whereas like our goal is to improve the overall district's.
I would posit that if we can't measure what we're trying to do, I'm not saying this is the right measurement, that like we could always say, pat ourselves in the back and say, look at all
But
the
I'm saying
things we
our
did.
activities aren't necessarily, now, certainly community engagement, we can measure how many newsletters we send out.
Yeah,
But basically how many newsletters we send out doesn't really matter, right? It's whether we get more community engagement, which is great, whether test scores go up, which is great. But the measurement of the test scores and what we look at falls more on the leadership at the district level and the building level to say like, this is this is how we measure it.
so this gets back to the conversation of like having district goals, that we have board goals that support and administration goals that support, right? That I think the superintendent was talking about a bit when he was talking about the building goals, aggregated district goals.
Which I hate to bring up again,
Yeah.
but I mean, it's almost like maybe next year we think about just an overall, and I stole this from Todd, a strategic kind of strategy for the district, and then, that way everybody can work towards that kind of long-term strategy.
What if you took the 10% out and we just had an increase if it's us who decides, like, is one more person at a school board meeting or a new person showing up to this event, does that signify
Sure. If we have
a
one
reasonable
person
increase?
show up,
No or yes, or,
It'd be 100% increase.
100% increase.
decide,
One person every meeting.
I do think one of the things to think about too is if your goal is to expand ways that we communicate, once you've done that, you can then measure how many people are accessing those. I was having a conversation with Tim about just people accessing rebroadcasts of our board meetings. And there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people who do that every week.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Hundreds of tens.
So, no, it's, Tim, what was it?
Right.
But so what happens is people may not be watching us live
Yeah.
necessarily because it's not must-see TV at 5:15 on a Thursday.
Shockingly.
But people do watch the meetings later on, and there's a number attached to that. And once you have things
So
you're
that's
doing,
measurable, yeah.
you can say, okay, how's that going? And if we want more people to watch our meetings, what are we going to do to make that happen?
Yep.
Maybe part of it is the time that we have meetings. I don't know. I mean, there are different things to talk about that we could do that might get more people
Maybe
watching.
we create a condensed version of the meeting that gets rid of all my jokes and just gets right to the facts, right? And
So
maybe we can
the-
do a few
yeah.
things.
So
Kristen.
I like the second goal
Yeah.
too. The only thing I would say is, and we can get rid of the 10%, like I'm not even sure how we'd measure that, right? Like when we say communication strategy, I don't want it to sound too much like it's like us putting information out, because communication is two-way. Like, and how has it become a dialogue with the community and not just how many new ways can we think of pushing information out?
What if it was engagement strategy, since we go down here?
Yeah,
and
there you
say
go.
Community engagement.
Yeah. I agree.
And then I think it's a great idea. My only concern is who's going to do that, because we're going to be putting.
Just as identify three
More work.
alternative methods.
That's true. You're right. 100% right. Thank you.
Maybe like, trial and error.
We could even do that one
Yeah.
tonight.
No. You have 3 more minutes till your brain turns to mush.
That's a good point. All right, so everybody's good so far. B, I don't think I had any issues with.
No.
C, A, the only thing is we can change it to level services funding or funded. I know I'm being nitpicky, but it's a very different term, very precise term.
Yeah.
Yeah, 4, I can't find any fault with that. That's,
I was just curious, actually on 3, the very last sentence, talks about presenting to the voters is not new work. Oh, okay. So that basically just using the same sort of template or method of communicating consistently over the years to voters, so that they, yeah, I 100% agree. For 4A, I love the idea of having people. If we try to do it each month, are we gonna just make people, teachers and staff, sick of having to come in front of us? Like, are we gonna make it less special if we do it every month? I mean, we could say at least twice a quarter, and then we could do it more than that.
Well, here's the counterpart thing to it, is if you're spreading this out across the high school, the middle school, the elementary school,
Yeah, fair.
academic areas and extracurriculars, teachers and students, I mean, to say that you can do that 12 times a year without burning people out, it feels like you should be able to if you're spreading, really doing the work to spread out and pick different areas to highlight.
Yeah, I guess, do we want to force ourselves to once a month, or do we want to?
Yeah, but once a month, even if you just think about the 3 schools, that's just once a quarter for each school.
Yeah.
If we have a particularly long series of meetings one month and we decide not to do it, we wouldn't be meeting the goal. No, maybe that doesn't matter because we're judging ourselves on the goal then.
biggest.
Well, I mean, part of this area, I think, is if we really want to highlight these things, it's also going to, there's got to be a certain discipline on us to say,
Yeah.
we're going to balance the agendas as best we can, because this is important, and,
Yeah.
and we want to do it.
Great point. I agree.
When Andy and I met with Olivia to kind of review being a board member and kind of answer her questions and stuff, that was one of the things we talked to her about is, reminding her that she's the board rep for the entire, all of the students in the district, not just at the high school.
That brings
And,
us to see,
and encouraging her to bring more of her classmates in to just invite them in when she's doing a report. So,
or even news from the other schools.
exactly. So if there's something she's sharing and there's a kid who can come in and say, that was the person that did that, it doesn't require a lot other than to have them show up and we say, hey, thank you very much, and acknowledge it.
And that brings me to see where I love the idea of having representatives, but from the elementary school, middle school, but in practical terms, what would an elementary school representative look like? Oh, okay, so you're not talking about like representative in the.
What I actually had in my head when I drafted that was that the middle school and the elementary school would pick somebody who would sort of probably do the majority heavy lifting for the official student rep in terms of giving them some material from the elementary school and the middle school that they could bring and as part of the student rep report.
Like the middle person.
Yeah, I'm just not sure at the elementary level there's people
They
who
have
would
a
want to engage in
They could
it.
probably incorporate that into their student council.
Yeah, they have
Yeah.
a fifth grade student council.
Oh, perfect.
And so
Okay, I didn't realize that.
They
I
could have a
should've
kid,
done
they could have if we said like maybe twice a year, we invite the fifth graders to
Yeah.
send someone over to do a report.
That's
We could do that.
fantastic. Yep. I didn't realize there was some. I was thinking a student rep, like, yeah.
If she's getting that material from students in the elementary and middle schools.
And
Yeah.
now that the
Great.
New Hampshire legislature makes it legal for her to miss a meeting,
She may have
she
more
could
time
act,
to
maybe
get
she
done.
could say, I'm not going to be here. Maybe the fifth grade person can come the night she's not able to be here.
There you go.
Something like that.
Cool. I think we just created some goals.
Look at that.
Yay.
Wow. I'm only
That makes
2
me so
minutes
happy.
over.
4 makes me happy too.
All right. We've already done public comment. Let's see. Seek motion to approve proposal for the Tier 2 social emotional behavior support. We can separate those if people want to, or do you want to just vote on them together? They are two separate items.
And it's also okay if you want to hold until next meeting, if you want to think on it, that's fine too. But
I'm ready to vote for the contracted services right now. It is the adding headcount that
I think the problem with contracted services without the head count defeats part of the purpose. Contracted services can teach everybody else, but they're also going to teach that person.
yeah, we need somebody who's actually going to do the work with the kids.
Okay.
So,
do people want to vote tonight, or would we rather wait until the next meeting?
I'm ready to vote, but I can.
Could you repeat what you said? You broke up a little bit, probably the internet on my end, but.
I said that I was willing to, although I was just told that it didn't make sense, that to vote the contract training staff, 100%, I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And if they need headcount right now, like I'm also for that. But my question is there a way to contract that service in, or do we want to add headcount totally? And that's where I'm like, I'm not sure.
If we believe, as I believe, and then again, it was a little unclear from where I'm sitting, so somebody please jump in. If, as I think I heard Erica say, this position would essentially be convertible to a para-type position in the event that we get a year or two down the road and realize that that the need has abated as we get further from the pandemic.
I think what
I'm okay voting on that.
I mean,
I think what she said is they can offer
Right.
that person a position as a pair, not that this particular person.
Right.
So the funding would go away for this position.
Well,
They would just be offered.
The thing to
the one
keep in
that's
mind
available.
with, within the NSSA, their employment agreements are 1 year at a time. There's no tenure like there is in the teacher world.
point.
So I mean, So the idea would be at the end of a year, if we decided it was not something that needed to continue, yes, there's the person in front of you that you want to offer some opportunity, and that's where a para position certainly could be offered. But as far as the budgeted position, if the need is not there, the position is not there.
I'm comfortable voting.
Yeah. I mean, I just want to, if we get a little further along and realize that this was a temporary need, I just want to understand what the off-ramp looks like, that's all.
I also think a contracted person as a behavioral tutor would not be for that price if they were an
Oh, it'd be
independent
way more
contractor.
expensive. Yeah.
So I think where you might save it,
Yeah, and
one
I think
area,
based
you
the-
don't.
now that it makes me realize that contracts are annual, and yeah,
I like,
it's easier to,
I want to get the support this right now, right, to them. Like, I'm not in favor of that. My concern is once we increase headcount, it's very rare to go the other way, right? Like, and if the need changes, then like, we still have the headcount. So.
but I think we've seen over the last years that it is like on a zero-based funding and headcount with the current superintendent and staff anyways. You can speak to the future, but
One day, people will be sitting here, there are none of us.
yeah, good point.
It's true.
Put in their contract in.
I mean, it's going to pass with everyone. I'm happy to vote for it.
Okay.
But,
Thank you. So I seek a motion to approve the 2 proposals for Tier 2 social emotional behavior support.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Dan, second by Lonnie. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, 4-0. Thank you.
You're looking at me every time, aren't you?
4-0.
Yes.
Eventually. Seek a motion to approve the 2024, the employee handbook
With the edits.
with the edits suggested this evening.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Lonnie, second by Phil. Next time, Dan. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Retain fund balance. Do you want a motion? I'm not sure what percent. I'm not sure. It's hard to ask for a motion without knowing the percentage we're interested in.
Remember, it's up to. So what we've done is 3.5%. Okay, so you could say 3.5%, and assuming that's left, that would be it.
Yeah.
Or you, to hedge your bets, you could say up to 3.6, and then we can still come back and revisit it.
I mean, if Jenna asked for 3.5, I'm putting all faith in her ability to.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm fine with that.
I got to tell you, while it is an early report, she meticulously went through everything. So I'm very confident that she's got it figured out.
All right. Seek a motion to approve the fiscal year 24 fund balance retention of 3.5%.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Phil, second by Dan. Any discussion? All those in favor? Oh, I'm sorry.
I do just want to say, the 3.5 doesn't give me heartburn because we've done it. I'm just want to put a pin in the notion that 5% is somewhere that we want to be, because I'm not sold on that.
Yeah, I think it depends on, I agree with you, but I think it depends on how close we are able to budget in the future, right?
Sure, but also given the fact that we're doing much better at putting specific capital reserve funds in place against specific contingencies.
Yeah.
And we're doing a much better job with the long-term capital improvement and facilities maintenance planning than we've ever been able to do in the past. This isn't a prescriptive statement. This isn't that I'm not open to somebody making a case for it. I'm just saying that I'm not confident that's where we want to be.
I hear you, Dan.
Yeah.
I hear you.
3.5% gets to be a bigger number each year.
Yeah. I mean, and I heard, not directly, but insinuation of working towards 5%. I certainly am not sure if 5% is the right number.
Yeah.
Just because it's the max.
And I think that's a conversation to have in budget development times as we talk about
Yeah.
all these things in terms of, we've got to start having these discussions about where we want to get aspirationally
Yeah.
with everything.
So we have a motion, a second on the floor. Is there any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Seek a motion to approve the second read and implement the BIA.
Go over the goals.
Oh my gosh, thank you. Seek a motion to approve the school board goals finalized tonight.
So moved.
Second?
Motion by Phil, second by Lonnie. Any further discussion?
Can I just ask, is the assumption that I'm going to make the edits to it? And is that what we're assuming?
Do you want one of us to make the edit?
I have my notes, but I just want to make sure that I
That's
have
fine.
your intent. Okay, all right.
Thank you very much.
All right,
Appreciate
okay.
that.
It is kind of a good point. The administration, right? Our goals doesn't feel
Yeah.
right to me.
You want to make the edits?
I have a Word document.
I would be happy to send you. This is the doc.
Can you send me a scan of your notes there?
Yeah, I will. Yep. And then we'll have to talk because you can't read my handwriting.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Seek a motion to approve the second read or seek a motion to approve the BIAR new board orientation doc or policy
So
supplemental.
moved.
Second.
By Dan, second. Bill, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay,
That was the guinea pig for that.
I know, huh?
yeah. I do have
Test. It was a test.
seek a motion to approve the June 6th, 2024 minutes.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Dan, second by Phil. Any discussion? I do have.
Yeah, I got a couple of things I picked out of this. Small ones, but, sorry, I'm scrolling down to that part of the, so on, I believe it's the third page, under international travel, it should be Mark Levitt, not Market.
Okay.
And at the top of page 4, under budget process, I think it should say what the level service would look like, not level on service. This is what you get when I go on vacation and look through
That's
this stuff.
too much time on the plane, yeah.
But that's all I
Oh,
have.
shoot. Thank you.
On the top of page 5, I did have correction. It's Dan Smith referred back to his previous comments regarding what the level service funding would look like instead of level service. No, I guess level service is actually fine. Never mind. Ignore that, please. But I do have a correction. Lonnie was absent during the May 16th meeting. So the motion to approve was 5-0. That was my fault. It should have been 4-0. And Lonnie asked you if
I
you
now
would
know.
abstain from those voting that. She abstained. So if we can modify that motion, that'd be helpful. All right. Anything else? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 You abstained from the last one, not this one.
No, aye. Sorry.
No, it's fine. It's confusing. You weren't here on the 16th, right?
Correct.
Okay.
So you
I
would
know I
like to-
texted you about it. I know I read it twice. I know I wrote it down. I still make mistakes. All right. Do we have manifests? I'd like to make a motion on.
Want me to do it? I
Only
approve-
because you were the last to
Since you
sign.
volunteered.
Yeah, I move to approve the manifest in the amount of $1,961,808.24.
I'll second that. Oh, Dan will second that. All right. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Love that you're changing your hand gestures. This, now we get this.
Next up, we have a donation from Mercy Church. Do you have any information on this you can share?
Yes. First of all, just a reminder that the policy requires any gifts over $1,000 have to be approved by the board. Mercy Church reached out and wanted to pay off the lunch debt remaining at the end of the year of all of the students at the junior senior high school, and they very kindly got that number from Jenna, and they made that donation. I think they're going to make it a regular occurrence because they want to support our kids and families. So I think it's a wonderful thing.
Meeting is over.
That's your time, yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Great. Thank you very much. Very generous. Let's seek a motion to accept those donations.
So moved.
Second.
By Lonnie, second by Phil. Any discussion?
Thank you for that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
All
Yeah,
those,
thank you very much.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah, they have been very generous in other ways as well. But this is the first time that's been a donation that's exceeded
Yeah.
the cap, if you will.
And then we have some personnel matters.
Yes.
You want to go over this?
Yes, definitely. So obviously at the, I think it was at the May 16th meeting, which I wasn't present for, but I believe that's when you authorized me to do hiring over the summer. So I wanted to inform you of some hires that we have done since then. I want to apologize. I had a couple of these at our last meeting, and we were so excited to get to the awards ceremony, I did not remember to point them out. So they're on the list twice. So if you saw them last time, I apologize for my redundancy. We have hired Stephanie Rattan as a third grade teacher. For those who don't know Stephanie, she's been a reading tutor in our schools. Just a wonderful person. With the retirement of June Williamson, a position became available, and so Stephanie's been hired. Very excited to have her there. A second staff member that was hired at the junior senior high school, Samantha Scarfo, has been hired in the position to replace Kathy Elderagi's position. She is a person that comes to us with a lot of background in mental health and social work, and so she really is excited. I was talking to Andy today. She's already asking about getting in touch with families and beginning to start building relationships even before we get going. Christine Lobsack we hired as we had an opening in the math department, and so we hired Christine Lobsack to be a math teacher and what we're calling a domain leader. So basically what she's going to do is she's going to be a combination of a teacher, but she's also going to be doing some curriculum direction and coaching and working within the department, because that's something that has come up as being an interest that the math department has in terms of having internal capacity to do a lot of those things. So Christine Lobsack there. I just last week was able to fill the elementary school assistant principal position. Very pleased at the caliber of this candidate, Erin Milbury. For those of you who don't know her, she's the current principal at Hampstead Middle School. She was principal at Seabrook Middle for a while, and actually was an assistant principal in the Epping school system for 6 or 7 years. This is one of those ones where you feel really good, because she said, I applied because it's Newmarket and I wanted to come back home. So she has taken a job, and so she will be at Newmarket Elementary School. So really exciting to see her come on board. And then the last professional position was Catherine Smith. She's filling the physical science position that was vacated when it was a series of dominoes. We had Kristen Kefauver retired, and then we moved some people around, and so what was left standing was a physical science position. Catherine comes to us from Prospect Mountain High School. We seem to have a pipeline from Prospect Mountain High School these days. But they're good people. An added benefit I discovered when I meet with all of our teacher candidates once we've decided we're going to nominate them. And when I called to invite her to come in, realized she's a former student of mine from Oyster River, and actually. And when she found, so it was actually kind of a reunion. She was in my 7th grade class 25 years ago. So it was so anyways, it's lovely to welcome her to come and teach physical science at the junior senior high.
You really do know everyone in this state.
So 5 excellent candidates there. And then in addition to that, the fall coaching nominees, these are all people who are continuing in their role. There's nobody new here. So these are all of the fall, basically the varsity and sub-varsity coaches that are continuing on. Andy will be, Jamie will be making nominations to fill any vacancies over the summer.
So to clarify, these are all acknowledgements, not.
Yeah, all
nominations.
acknowledgements,
Yes,
yep,
thank you. Okay.
yep.
All right, I'd seek a motion to acknowledge the hiring presented tonight. So moved. By Bill,
Second.
second by Dan. Any discussion?
Thank you very much to the community volunteers again who are volunteering to coach,
Absolutely.
and to the teachers as well. But
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Go ahead, Dan, did you, all those in favor? Did you vote? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
oh, sorry, you lagged for a second. So.
Yeah, no worries. And I do believe that is it. So my next meeting is July the 11th, right here. With that, I'd seek a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
By Phil, second by Lonnie.
On July 11th, I'll be on that.
Ah,
Oh,
look at
that's
that.
right.
Rotating screens.
Yep.
It's great, let me tell you.
That's good in the Courtyard Marriott down there.
I didn't like teaching on anything.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Bye.
With that, we are adjourned at 7:21 PM.
Wonderful.
Thank you all very much.